in between Jan Ulrich and Lance Armstrong's group as we are speaking. Looking further down the road, this is the yellow jersey trying to keep it on his shoulders for one more day, but it's going to be a tall order. I actually thought, Phil, looking at the race profile this morning, that he would survive, but there was only one thing that could prevent him from surviving. It was whether or not these guys went out and raced this stage in a difficult manner, and I think we've already answered that question with the attack of Jan Ulrich.
Well, Paulo Voigtler, the clock is ticking away, and he's now well out of the lead in yellow. We're looking at the face of Thomas Voigtler now, the rider who is quite a long way behind, now nearly 2 minutes behind the action of the day. He cracked twice on the earlier climbs, he got back, but on this one, that initial attack by Jan Ulrich has spread eagle the Tour de France today, and it is going to hurt now all of the way to the finish in Villard-de-Lans, still away distant. In fact, 50 kilometres still away. Richard Veronk and Michael Rasmussen. Rasmussen 13 minutes behind overall. So he's not a danger at all to Lance Armstrong yet. And don't forget, Lance Armstrong now the leader of the Tour de France on the road. This man, though, looking to reshape the Tour in its final week. We'll take a break, come back live on OLN. Welcome back. The determination of a rejuvenated man who celebrated a great rest day in Nîmes, and he's come out fighting. He's just picked up Christian van der Velde here, who was in the original breakaway today, the American rider, and he's sitting now at the back. This is Jens Voigt, who's also decided to slow down. Got mixed up in rather a hot battle today that was not previewed or planned, and he is now dropped away from the action by the look of it, because they know there's a really tough end to this race, and of course it's only day 1 of 3 in the Alps. We've talked about this being the most vicious end to the Tour de France for 30 years. Tomorrow the time trial, the next day the incredibly hard stage, the Grand Bornand, then the undulations to Lanzon-Saunière, and then of course the final time trial. 5 kilometres to the summit, and Ulrich still has a lot of chance here to get himself across to the leaders, and if he does, then there's going to be a severe chase over the final couple of climbs of the day. Armstrong can't give him too much. So as we see the 3 riders here, it's now time for our T-Mobile update. And at the start of the day, bad news for the highest placed rider, Andreas Kloden. He crashed. They said it wasn't a serious crash, but he did spend a lot of time going back to see Gérard Porte, the doctor, who, by the way, is on his 35th Tour de France. This is where they all sit on the T-Mobile team. Kloden the best. Ulrich all of a sudden looking to improve that 7-minute deficit. Guerini, who launched Ulrich into pursuit, is still 34th himself. And there is all of the T-Mobile team. Now, as we look here, we're going down the road to find these 2 riders trying to hang on. Vincenti Garcia Acosta has been dropped now, as Jan Ulrich just gets on with the job of going forward. Well, he is looking like a totally different bike rider today, Paul. This man has come out to put matters to rights. He'll make his German press very happy, because one minute I heard Ulrich was boycotting the German press, the next minute I hear the German press are boycotting Ulrich because he bought. This looks terrible here.
It's not terrible. It is very intelligent. Jens Voigt has been told to sit up and wait for the group behind, because Ivan Basso is in the situation today where he could be losing his 2nd place in the overall classification. I saw Jens Voigt taking on board plenty of food. The reason is he needs to go back to this group for reinforcements.
Well, we've seen it happen. We're seeing CSC Jens Voigt, who was in the break, now waiting for the group. There's Basso. And remember, there's a little bit of a way to go, but I think the CSC team are going to have to help US Postal here, because T-Mobile, he won't pull back 7 minutes today, but a few minutes today and a bit more in the time trial tomorrow, and all of a sudden we will have Jan Ulrich looking for a podium finish. I can't believe he can get up to yellow jersey right now, but he certainly could be on the podium in what is his beloved 2nd place finish. Remember, he's finished 5 times 2nd in this race.
Now, these are riders coming back. Garcia Acosta, this is Jens Voigt looking over his shoulder, and I would think immediately he'll put himself into the line of US Postal Service riders, and there it is, confirmation of what I thought the tactics was going to be.
So Voigt told to come back, wait, and to take up the chase now, because Ulrich has caused panic. We always talk about that man as having the greatest class of all the professional bike riders, and now you see why. He suddenly has turned on the style. Cloden is there in the white jersey, best placed of T-Mobile, and going forward with no reason to work at all. Now all of the pressure is on the riders who are now first and second in the Tour de France, Lance Armstrong and Ivan Basso. So it's those teammates who must do the chasing on Ulrich.
It really is quite remarkable to see the coalitions and alliances that have to be formed in a bike race like this just to survive and keep yourself in position in the overall classification. Right now we're seeing a fragile alliance being formed between CSC and US Postal Service, because Ivan Basso, I believe, is worried about his second place in the overall classification. He will do a very good ride tomorrow in the individual time trial to the summit of the Alpe d'Huez, but if he gives too much time back to a man like Jan Ulrich on stages like this, Ulrich will almost certainly overtake him in the final time trial. Let's not forget that final time trial is very long indeed, and we have no real references of the performances of Ivan Basso in the individual time trial. It's not his strong point. It's even been described as his Achilles heel.
But it's uphill and things will happen. There are many, many thousands of people waiting to cheer everybody on. So if they can, we will see. But we're looking at Vironk at the moment, who's consolidating his overall lead in the King of the Mountains. And here comes Ulrich driving on. He's looking for Brochard. He'll be the next man in his sights. And it looks as though only one rider is now staying with him, and that is Santos Gonzalez. Christian van der Velde has been dispatched by the pace. Ulrich is continuing to nip the apexes of the corners and keep on going down. He took many, many risks the other day when it was raining coming down the Col d'Aspin, and he got away from Armstrong. Armstrong remained calm and he came back, but it does show, as Paul has said, that Ulrich now has concentrated on his descending powers.
Something's just coming back into my mind. This is reminding me of a time when we came here in the Tour de France back in 1989, when a certain Laurent Fignon had to go out and make a long breakaway on the stage up to Villard-de-Lans because he wanted to try and eliminate a certain Greg LeMond on that occasion. He actually won the stage here, and he got himself the yellow jersey back away from LeMond. But later on, it was always thought that he'd actually wasted an awful lot of energy on this one stage, and that condemned him to losing the Tour de France at the end by just 8 seconds. Rather interesting, really, how history repeats itself.
It is amazing, and we're just onto the lower slopes. It's not a very hard climb, this one. This is the third category called the Carré, and it's only a couple of kilometers in length. More points, of course, for Vironk up front. Here comes the drive now, and this is Jens Voigt. This is why he went back to the group. He hasn't come off since now. And I bet the US Postals were glad to see that man too. Still to come, a third category and 2 seconds, including the finish. The Côte du Chalimont and the Villard-de-Lans climb itself are both pretty tough climbs. We're on the Col de Carré at the moment, and it looks as though Vironk has read it right, at least for that climb.
Well, Vironk should have a very good chance to stay off the front end for at least one more climb, but the way the pressure is being put on by Jan Ulrich, I don't think it'll be very long before he catches that leading group of 2 riders. In fact, he's catching Laurent Brochard here, so he will put himself into 3rd place on the road. The race situation is there are only 2 men in front of Jan Ulrich now. Richard Vironk is one of them. He's joined by Michael Rasmussen. The time gap is a minute. But the time gap back to Lance Armstrong's group is still only hovering at 40 seconds.
Well, we're looking now at the chasers, and they've been joined by Brochard now, and no help required from Jan Ulrich. He's now searching for just 2 riders up front. They should get over the top of the Col de Carré, but that's about it. They're going to be picked up then. Richard Vironk and Michael Rasmussen. Vironk will get more points in his King of the Mountains competition. So as there he goes, over the top goes Richard Vironk. Now don't forget, you can get the inside edge for tour updates, highlights and previews in the AOL for Broadband Tour de France pre-race show. Now note the special time tomorrow, 8 AM Eastern time, because we have an horrendous time trial of Alpe d'Huez. The AOL for Broadband Tour pre-race show right here on OLN. So he's settling down now to rip this race apart. Can he continue such pace-making as this? Armstrong, for the first time, suddenly on the defensive by you-know-who. And they're coming. We'll take a short break. Rejoin us after the break. Welcome back. Our first day in the Alps is turning out to be a real tough one for everybody, and not least the Maillot Jaune. He went over the top of the climb at 6 minutes behind Richard Vironk and about 4 minutes behind the Lance Armstrong group, so he is out of that leader's yellow jersey. Now we're on the way down here, the Col de Carry, which takes us through to 39.9 kilometers to go. And it looks as though Rasmussen still got strength here. He's been on the attack throughout the mountains, deserves something out of these last 3 hilly days, as he now joins up with Richard Veronk. So as these riders skim around the corners there, don't forget today's word of the day is domestique. And to find out more, log on to olntv.com, because you could win an amazing cycling trip right here through France. And so find out more by logging on to olntv.com. The word of the day is domestique. 3 riders. There's the beautiful Vercors now on the shoulders of the riders. Wonderful area to race, and what a day. Very, very hot, and a lot of strong wind blowing out there too. Time gaps, by the way, the Armstrong group running at 2 minutes 18 on the leaders, and they're about 36, about 50 seconds behind Ulrich's group. So they're coming, but it's taking an awful lot of work.
And Ulrich is taking an awful lot of risks. He almost lost it going around that corner, and I think he's trying to take as many risks as possible to extend the advantage on the descent. And maybe he thinks he might put Armstrong into a spot of bother, and Armstrong will continue to take risks. He's not going to at all, you know, because Armstrong is a magnificent bike rider, and in the past we've seen Ulrich not really being able to take the right lines around corners. It reminds me of when he won the Tour de France in 1997. He actually almost lost the lead on a descent of a mountain.
Yes, he most certainly did. And as we know, on one tour he went off the mountain and Armstrong waited for him as he came down the Col de Peyrasourde. 38 kilometers to go now, and 2 second category climbs remain in those 38 kilometers. We are probably only going to be on a flat road for approximately 20 of them. Rasmussen and Veronk are still trying to stay away, and they're both quality bike riders in the mountains, so there is a chance for them. But unfortunately, they're getting mixed up now in a battle for greater prizes, and that's who's going to win the Tour de France. And it's not going to be Thomas Voeckler anymore. He is now, this time, lost far too much time. But Lance Armstrong joining forces, strangely enough, with CSC to try and control the man that I reckon everybody must have thought was down and out.
Well, one man knew that he wasn't, and it was Jan Ulrich himself, and I'm quite convinced that over the rest day he pushed everybody away and he locked himself into his room to get back the concentration required to try and challenge Armstrong for this victory. Ulrich is a great champion. He's always been a great champion, and champions have pride, and that's why he's gone out here this afternoon. He's so far down in the overall classification, 6 minutes 39 seconds behind Armstrong, and today he's hoping to reduce that gap going into the individual time trial tomorrow, where he'll probably lose a little bit more time, but for him he's still got a very serious crack at the podium.
Well, the riders we're being told is in that Armstrong group. There are his teammates Jose Acevedos and Floyd Landis, and also in there, of course, Andreas Kloden, Aitor Gonzalez, the winner the other day, Basso, Carlos Sastre, Jens Voigt, who's doing a lot of the pacemaking. Christian van der Velde, I think, is already unhooked at the back. Levi Leipheimer is still there, and Marius Sabaliauskas is also there. So as far as we can work out, Paul, Georg Tochnig is losing ground here.
Yeah, it appears as if Georg Tochnig has missed out, and also the man missing out from the group as well is Francisco Mancebo, the man who was in 5th place in the overall classification. So Levi Leipheimer is actually going to make a very good operation this afternoon, and I could see him by the end of the day possibly climbing into the 8th or 9th position overall. Which
would be a superb jump for him, and more importantly from Jan Ulrich's point of view, with a couple of guys missing out, even Ulrich could be back into the top 6 of this Tour de France. Amazing. Nice view from the helicopter there. I'm sorry about the picture breakup today. Obviously, despite lovely weather conditions, we're fighting here at times to hold our pictures steady. We're racing towards the beautiful Vercors there. And let's call on our little man. There he is. For exclusive race highlights and behind-the-scenes action, AOL for broadband members, go to AOL keyword Tour de France or AOL.com. Now, I wonder what the information is coming out of that telecom car there. He's probably telling him he's put them under terrible pressure. Now Floyd Landis has had to go back in here and work hard. Voigt has just taken a little breather into second wheel. The big leaders, Basso, Leipheimer, Kloden and Armstrong are all following the pace here. Doesn't look as though he's panicking too much, but Lance doesn't panic. He tries to control things, though, and he wasn't expecting this today. What a race on our hands on the eve of the time trial. We'll take a break live on OLN. Welcome back. Laurent Brochard here now, providing a good pair of legs here to help Jan Ulrich. That's the first man who's been able to do so since he moved clear halfway up the Col de l'Acharason. And this is the Armstrong group, again being driven by Jens Voigt, who was in the lead, and he was called back to pace this team because his leader, Ivan Basso, is sitting there 51, just behind number 1, Lance Armstrong. Those two men are currently second and first in the Tour de France, because the Maillot Jaune is now too far behind to concern us. Well, this has been a vicious chase. They're holding the moment, and the closing. The gap is now 35 seconds, the gap between the two groups, and Ulrich there chasing the two leaders. Anyway, let's remind ourselves and experience the wonder and the excitement of the great outdoors. Here we go, as OLN brings you the greatest moments in outdoor and action sports. That's Outside's magazine, Ultimate Top 10, and that comes up next here on OLN after the live coverage of today's stage of the Tour de France. Well, we're back down the road a ways now. There is the Maillot Jaune. He's still fighting. He still gets his team around him. He still lives in hope that he can bring it back together. And I think that is a fantastic piece of riding. So as we look at him, let's remind ourselves of our Nike yellow jersey moment. What a great run it's been for Thomas Voeckler. 141st in the prologue over 2 weeks ago in Liège, Belgium. Then on the road to Chartres on stage 5, he joined a breakaway, finished 4th. That gave him the yellow jersey. And that's the way it stayed until today. Thomas Voeckler enjoying nightly the pleasures of pulling on the golden Maillot Jaune. So Voeckler become quite a star overnight, and when the going got tough, this man became even tougher. He fought through the crowds in the Pyrenees. We all expected him to lose it, not on your life. When he came up towards the finish and the second stage at the Plateau de Baille, looked at the clock, he knew he still had the lead by just 22 seconds. And that's how it all looks as of today, as of this morning indeed. From 141st to 1st for 10 days of the Tour de France. And now, I have to say, is his last. That is your Nike yellow jersey moment. Here we are now with Laurent Brochard, just slowing down a bit for the sharp left-hander. We must be going down around 70-80 kilometers an hour here just now as we descend to basement before we start the climb of the Col de Chalimont. We top that with just 16 kilometers left to ride today, then we climb up to Villard de Lans. And again, Jan Ulrich there, taking a very wide berth. I don't know whether he's just an ungainly rider sometimes, Paul, but he certainly has a job at getting his bike around that bend.
Very often you find that big riders are not that good at going downhill because the center of gravity is a lot higher than need be. I also think that Jan Ulrich has opted today. He's obviously thought today about going out on this move, and you can see he's got very deep rims on those wheels of his. They're carbon fiber rims which make the wheels exceptionally rigid, so when you're trying to throw the machine around corners like that, sometimes the bike doesn't respond as nicely as you would like it to.
Well, he's found himself two good allies here. They've taken a deep breath and they've hooked on to him. So this is Santos Gonzalez of Phonak, sadly the team of Tyler Hamilton, who didn't make it the other day, abandoning in the Pyrenees. And Laurent Brochard, former world champion, who's having a great tour. It was rather a quiet one in the first few weeks, but we watched him and he was always in our frame somewhere, and today he really did read the move quite right. He's still quite well up overall as well.
Yeah, he's 23rd overall at the start of the day, about 14.5 minutes behind. I think those two riders with Jan Ulrich, Phil, cannot actually help Ulrich because he's absolutely flying along. But the distance between Ulrich and the Armstrong-Basso group is being reduced slowly but surely. In fact, there's only around about 25 seconds between the two groups. So I'm quite sure on the long straightaways they can actually see Ulrich's group just in front of them. Just looking down here from the helicopter, that is the group of the yellow jersey. He's got a lot of his teammates around him now to try and whip up the pacemaking.
Well, Ulrich is being pulled back. There's no doubt about that. Two small second category mountains to come. The chase, remember, aren't interested in Richard Virenque here and Michael Rasmussen because they are 13 minutes and 14 minutes down respectively overall. So they're not endangering anybody right now. The Armstrong group is 1 minute 7 seconds behind these two, but more importantly 26 seconds behind Jan Ulrich's group. Well, there is Ulrich, and I think we were getting slightly different times there on the official time board, but we'll keep an eye on our computer. This is the drive going on. Ulrich asking for no help as he tries to reduce that 7-minute deficit that he had at the start of today in the Tour de France. Stay live with us on OLN. Welcome back as we now see, as we speak, the catch there of Jan Ulrich, and they've just brought him back on the long straight road as we now leave ourselves just 27 kilometers to ride. It's been a vicious race conducted largely by two riders, Floyd Landis, the teammate of Lance Armstrong, and Jens Voigt, the teammate of Ivan Basso, the first and second riders overall in the Tour de France. These two men have suffered from that attack as well because they were going for the win, and now the gap to them is only 39 seconds. There's the catch again for you. It happened literally just a minute ago. As I just wonder if anything was said here as the blue train came up alongside Jan Ulrich. Ulrich will not even know that a lot of the chasing was done by the CSC rider Jens Voigt. But there he is back in the group, and the heart-stopping moment, which lasted for about 30 kilometers, is back together. Well, it's all over, Paul, but the gap now, by the way, the maillot jaune, is a massive 6 minutes from the two leaders, which puts him 5.5 minutes behind Armstrong and Basso, which means that the yellow jersey will be on the shoulders of Lance Armstrong tonight. He will get to start last in the important time trial tomorrow, and that is a big advantage.
It's interesting because he is not the man who actually went out on the attack. It was the other teams who actually attacked the race. Armstrong so far has been very careful in whenever he's picked a moment to actually go out and try and attack the race. He actually allowed T-Mobile to be the ones who are the aggressive team this afternoon, and they have absolutely blown this race to pieces because of the attack there by Jan Ulrich. But what it's done, in fact, it's eliminated one or two riders from the top of the overall classification, riders like Francisco Mancebo and Georg Tocznik, and that will have the effect of moving Jan Ulrich by the end of today probably into the top 5.
Yeah, well, so making him look a lot more respectable too. The maillot jaune losing 6 minutes. He could be looking at perhaps 10 minutes by the finish if he keeps that up, and he could be out of the top 6 riders in the Tour de France. But hopefully he'll keep his white jersey as best rookie, because Sandy Cassar, who is nearest to him, is also in trouble today and behind the yellow jersey. These two riders still hoping that they can do it as they're now heading up towards the climb of the Col de Chalimont, second category. And Rasmussen, both these riders good climbers. And now that they've caught Jan Ulrich, I think the pace will slacken here, and we should see the gap opening. In fact, as I speak, it's out to 46 seconds.
They have absolutely no reason at all to chase down those two leaders, because neither of those guys is any threat at all in the overall classification. And the best man there is Michael Rasmussen in 18th place. I think they'll back off just a little bit and let a certain amount of rest come into this group, and that might give the yellow jersey a chance to recover. But at 5 minutes in arrears, that's an awful big deficit to try and pull back.
Well, Santos Gonzalez, and it's good to see Christian van der Velde here, has just tagged on to the back as well. The white jersey of Andreas Kloden, 4th overall, now looking at a 3rd overall climb today, and a podium place in Paris, an incredible result for the bronze medalist in the Olympic Games in Sydney 4 years ago. He's in the white jersey. Laurent Brochard looking for a big rise as well. He's off to the right of our picture, number 141. If you're just joining us, I can tell you that Iban Mayo, the leader of Euskaltel, didn't start today. Neither did Jakob Peel of Team CSC, and abandoning Paolo Volotti. 3 riders out today, 157 going towards the time trial tomorrow. And this looks like they're coming up to under the banner here, which will be 25 kilometers to go for the two leaders, who have been out for much of the day here. They were battling out the prizes on the second category, Côte de Limouche, with 89 kilometers left at that point, and it was Veronk taking that.
Well, these two riders now are taking advantage, I think, of the fact that the main interest of that group there with Lance Armstrong and Ivan Basso was to catch Jan Ulrich. So I think they will open up their advantage a little bit more on this final climb out on the open roads. The Col de Chalimont, 10.3 kilometers of climbing. 6.4 miles. It's an average gradient of 5.8%, and it's been given a categorization of a second category climb, and it is really made only difficult by the length of it.
It's a very select group of 14 cyclists down there now, but some noted names are not included. Francesco Mancebo, 5th overall. Georg Tochnik, 6th overall. They're not in that group, and Sandy Cassar in 10th overall. He's not in that group either. So we could see a little bit of reshuffling, and Gilberto Simoni, I don't know what's happened to him today, but he's not there. They are now under that 25 kilometers to go banner. The check there is 46 seconds the gap. 6 minutes exactly. We are looking back to the maillot jaune of the Tour de France, Thomas Voeckler.
It's quite interesting to see Christian van der Velde in this group from Liberty Seguros. He's really regarded as a teammate of Roberto Heras. Heras completely absent from the front end of the bike race here. Started the day in 35th, 27 minutes behind the man who used to be his leader, Lance Armstrong. And I think by the end of the day, he's going to be closer to the 1 hour. Just once again going to amplify the fact that it's so much more difficult to have the role as the team leader. Roberto Heras switched teams during the winter months to go to Liberty Seguros to act as team leader for the Tour de France, and I think he's cracked because of the mental pressure of being top dog.
Well, we're still on the fastest ever Tour de France, although we expect to slow a little bit now we've entered the Alps. They certainly didn't slow for the first 2 hours of the race today, so they should keep on the fastest record Tour de France even by the end of this day. As we're now looking here at the two leaders, Richard Virenque and Michael Rasmussen. Rasmussen's tried daily to get a result out of the mountain stages. Now this is rather sad because this is Christian van der Velde. He's had to let go, and hopefully he'll hang on, because this is a long climb, the Côte de Chalamont. It's over 10 kilometers, and then once he's over the top though, he's only 10 miles or 16 kilometers from the finish. Well, he's got to keep on fighting and hope that they don't accelerate too much. They're not really concerned about the two leaders now. It's again up to Ulrich to attack, and the gap is 45 seconds. There was the catch. We're all together at the back. We'll stay live on OLX. Welcome back as we're looking here at the yellow jerseyed group of Thomas Voeckler. We're now going back down the road more than 6 minutes, by the way, as they now look to be slowing down. Quite difficult for them after a tough day on the road. Well, it all went wrong for Voeckler today on the big climbs, and he wasn't able to hold on to his race lead. Anyway, let's take a look at the Energizer long-lasting athlete of the day, Thomas Voeckler.
The spotlight of the Tour de France is bright, particularly on the French, who've not enjoyed a win by one of their own since Bernard Hinault in 1985. In recent years, though, their great joys have come from Laurent Jalabert and Richard Virenque, whose checkered past hangs like a dark cloud over his brilliant victories and over much of French cycling as well. It's this history that makes Thomas Voeckler's run in the yellow jersey this year much more important. For 12 days, 25-year-old Thomas Voeckler has been the toast of France. After grabbing the lead on stage 5, questions were asked, would this be a fleeting glance at yellow? His glorious ride on Bastille Day in the Massif Central gave us the first clue of how good his form really was. But none of this could have prepared us for Voeckler's ride through the Pyrenees. His run in the yellow jersey was supposed to vanish in the high mountains of southern France. Instead, Voeckler has found new strength with every turn of the pedals. This kid has panache. It's almost as if he hears the collective gasp when he falters and knows it's time to dig that little bit deeper. His performances at La Mongie and the Plateau de Bay would have been remarkable even without the burden of the yellow jersey resting on his shoulders. Despite his spectacular performance to date, this kid will not win the Tour. There are simply too many mountains still to come. His victory should come in the Young Riders competition, but the real pressure for Thomas Voeckler will come when the Tour de France ends and the expectations begin. The 19-year drought since a French victory will be his burden to carry, but if his performance this year is any indication, this kid may become the man to just pull it off.
Well, that's the story of Thomas Voeckler. It has come to an end. It had to come to an end somewhere. Even he said one day he would pass his jersey to either Lance Armstrong or Jan Ulrich. It now seems it's going to be to Lance Armstrong, who is now over 6 minutes ahead of him. And he's just come back to the car here for a drink as well. But what a wonderful 10 days, not just for him, but also for France, because in the last month, he has become champion of France in more ways than one. So back to a familiar scene now, as we're looking at the two pacemakers and the number one man, Lance Armstrong, followed by Ivan Basso, and also down there now Jan Ulrich, who has shown us there's still a glimmer of hope in that man. The lights haven't gone out completely. And also, I'm delighted to say, Levi Leipheimer has made the split here and will be climbing the overall classification tonight.
Yes, he should very easily climb up into the top 10 overall, because although Georg Tocznik and Francisco Mancebo are not in the group, we actually have no time checks to just exactly where they are on the road, but we do know they've been eliminated from the race by the incredible attack, the brave attack by Jan Ulrich. And I think Ulrich may have thought that Armstrong was going to go with him, but Armstrong, I think, very cleverly, very lucidly just sat back and asked his teammates to lift the pace up, as he has done on a number of occasions when he's seen attacks coming. He's a very crafty tactician.
He is, and we're looking down the two leaders here as we climb the Chalimont, which will top at 16 kilometers from the finish. But in fact, the group is pulling them back on a very regular basis here now, 33 seconds. The actual race radio is telling us 25 seconds, so one way and the other, I think the pacemaking here by Floyd Landis is bridging that gap nicely. Again, Acevedo in second place. He's first reserve. If Floyd should crack, he'll take up the pacemaking for Armstrong. It's such a different way of riding a race these days than it was 20 years ago in the Tour de France. These two riders just hanging on. Oh, and Richard Virenque even finding a moment there to give us a smile. He knows they're coming, but what he would like to do is get the points on the top of the climb before they actually do arrive. I can't see them holding off that group now.
It's going to be very difficult. That group is just ticking away with an excellent job of work being done on the front by Floyd Landis. 25 seconds is the gap now, crackling over race radio. They've still got a long way to go to the summit of this climb, and hopefully very shortly they will pull themselves back to the leading group of two. But then the question is, who's going to win the stage, because there's some big names in this leading group.
Yes, there are. And it looks as though Rasmussen, Levi Leipheimer will do no helping at the back because he's got Rasmussen up here at the front. Rabobank, two strong men for the overall this year. They're saying now is 20 seconds now as we look at 25 seconds. But here, I'm afraid the Maillot Jaune looks as though he's been slipped off by the main field as well. So the determination and the courage has really gone out of his body today, and he's still got the time trial tomorrow, of course.
It's a tough day for this young man. He's got the yellow jersey on his shoulders here. We've seen all the main contenders at the front end of the race, and this man, I think this afternoon, Phil, really has lost all his energy.
Well, the yellow jersey is changing shoulders, probably to Lance Armstrong tonight. The polka dot jersey, it's going to be increased in the lead for Richard Virenque. Thomas Voeckler should hopefully do enough to claim the white jersey, because he's led in 2 competitions for 10 days, while Robbie McEwen, a very early casualty today, dropped by the peloton. He's riding in still in his green jersey and should keep that today. He's a long way behind right now, Robbie, and this turning out to be a rather more than ordinary stage in the Tour. We expected the riders to just take it easy because of the eve of the time trial, but instead they've really raced each other. The peloton has hardly been in a complete pack all day.
Well, they raced very quickly over the first couple of hours of racing. In fact, the first 2 hours of racing over not very flat roads were run off at 44 kilometers an hour. And it was only when the right combination of a breakaway formed after 53 kilometers that they were given a certain amount of freedom. And even in that first hour of racing, the main field actually split into several groups before coming back together and allowing that leading group of 14 to go free.
Well, this looks like the catch now.
Leipheimer's gone on the attack there, just at the point there that he's about to catch those 2 leaders. He's gone out of the group now. He's a serious candidate to get the victory. He won a stage this year early on in Spain in the Semana Catalana, and I don't think anybody will respond to that attack, because he's a fair way down in the overall classification, and Levi Leipheimer at 14th is absolutely no threat at all to Lance Armstrong.
Well, the interesting thing is he's come up to his teammate Rasmussen, gritting his teeth. Rasmussen jumped on, and so too a Richard Virenque. Now we've got 3 strong men here, and we're only looking at 16 kilometers to go as they come up to the top. Virenque will be doubly determined here. He wants the points at the top of this climb, and he's not going to get pulled back by the peloton at this stage. Well, peloton, there are 13 riders in that pursuing group. This is a very intelligent move by Leipheimer. He's gone up to reach his teammates, and now he might well go on to the last climb of the day in the lead.
Good move. He waited to see whether or not his teammate was going to survive. Michael Rasmussen has nothing left in those legs of his. Don't forget, he's been away since the 53rd kilometer of the race and put a lot of effort into the success of this breakaway. But what amazes me is Reshaping has been in that breakaway too, and he has the ability to push himself so hard to try and get this King of the Mountains title that he wants to take for a record 7th time. It looks like this may well be a race of records.
Well, this is the group here now, and Floyd Landis has continued to pace-make, and it looks now he's slipped to the back of the group here with Laurent Brochard, which means that Acevedo will continue now to look for Armstrong. Basso has actually gone round Armstrong, so Leipheimer has caused a little bit of consternation in this group because they are driving up to try and catch him.
Well, this looks like a very interesting move coming. I think it was Carlos Sastre there, trying to pull the race back together. These guys now are thinking about the stage victory. I don't think they're worried about Levi Leipheimer in the overall contention of the race. He is going to move up into the top 10 at the end of the stage, as that acceleration by CSC is damning Laurent Brochard here, who will not be able to stay on the wheel, and also getting rid of one of the CSC teammates, Jens Voigt.
Well, this is an amazing day now. They're throwing Leipheimer at everything. If he gets away over the top of this climb, he is looking for a high finish in the Tour de France. There is Jens Voigt, who has worked so hard, is now seeing the group he was pacing riding away from him on the climb of the Chalimont. Well, it just shows you the climbers and the pacemakers, and the pacemakers are hurting big time now. Lance Armstrong remains calm and collected as the race goes on. We'll take a break on our own. Welcome back, and this is the catch. Carlos Sastre is the man who's finishing it off for CSC. So now we are all back together again, and just Levi Leipheimer there looking to see who's brought him back. Well, it's Carlos Sastre, and this is a very, very select group now. There are 8 riders in this group pulling away from the rest. A remarkable race indeed today. Cloden in the white jersey on the right. Reshaping, who's still looking for the points on these climbs, just making sure he saves a bit of energy on the back. And look at the man from Germany, Jan Ulrich. Looks like he's in his old condition here now. I wonder if he can find the legs on the last climb to the finish. Sastre riding very high up overall himself. He's in 12th position. But giving away all of his energy to save Ivan Basso. Basso is the rider. Now it's Acevedo moving for US Postal, the man who on 2 days in the Pyrenees finished it off before Lance Armstrong launched himself into space. And Levi Leipheimer now still looking very good. He made a good move there. That was a very intelligent attack, trying to catch his teammate Michael Rasmussen before the group came up. But they keep throwing everything at one another, and they keep coming back into this group. When they do, there's 1 or 2 riders have been dropped by it. So 8 riders in this group. We are just about 2 kilometers from the summit of the Col du Chalimont, and this is a second category climb. Not the steepest of climbs, a very fast climb, but it's uphill even so all of the way. And then they'll only descend very briefly before they come into Villard de Lans, and then we will join the climb that brings them up to the finishing line here. Beautiful day. Happy to say that the thunderstorms forecast for mid-afternoon still not looking likely. Very, very warm, humid day. The only advantage for the boys is they will pick up a nice tailwind to finish the stage today. I think 1 or 2 riders are going to need the help of that tailwind. It's a nice little crowd here. We're still about 1.5 kilometers from the summit of the Chalimont. Very narrow roads in this region. It's infamous for narrow roads, so they don't want big bunches coursing the way through the Vercors. Just coming into the last 18 kilometers. We topped the mountain with 16 kilometers to go. Reshaping will try to sprint past them for the points, but right now he's slipped down the lines, keeping out of the way of the heat of the night, I think, because this is now a battle between CSC and US Postal with the intrusion of T-Mobile.
I'm quite amazed at how hard this race has been this afternoon. I expected a group of 15 or possibly 20 riders to come together to the bottom of the final climb of the day here in Villard de Lans, but that was discounting the fact that a certain man by the name of Jan Ulrich went out and put in a searing attack. And I don't think it actually upset Armstrong too much, but it certainly worried Ivan Basso and the CSC team, because it was basically that team that took the responsibility of putting the chase in. And strangely enough, the order will have come from Jan Ulrich's former teammate, Björn Ries, who's the team manager at CSC.
Yes, that's right. They finished first and second in the Tour de France in 1996 on the same team, and I do believe that Ulrich could have won that Tour. He was handicapped by the fact his team captain was in the lead, and it gave Björn Ries the victory. We're going back down the road now to over 7 minutes to see these pictures of the yellow jersey having a drink. The big thing about being in the yellow jersey, he has been given a lot of help from other teams who've been congratulating him on a daily basis. But you know, it's been the first day in the Alps which has caused all of the problem as we now head into the beautiful valley of the Vercors, and as we go up towards the finish today via the Col de Chalimont and the Villard de Lans climb, that is going to hurt the legs once and for all. We really didn't expect to have so many riders going out on the attack, and once more we've come back to a very select group of small men at the front. And once over the Col de Chalimont, by the way, it's 16 kilometers to the finish, and that will take us right to the finishing line. We actually pay a brief visit into the village of Villard de Lans and then come out onto the mountain for the big finish. Some strained faces there right now. Carlos Sastre doing the work, but it's hurting. And I can't believe Cloden is losing ground here, but he's going back to the car, I suspect.
Let's not forget, Phil, in the early part of the day, this man was involved in an accident. He crashed after about 75 kilometers. He was alongside the race doctor's car for a long period looking after an injury. And if you actually look at his shorts there, just on the left-hand side, you can see that he went down pretty hard. And I think the pressure here by those men at the front is putting this young man into a spot of bother. But I think
he went back for a chat.
Yeah.
He seems to be okay, but you're right, it was a heavy fall there to Ricky Short's got a nasty wheel coming up. But I think he's gone back to check out on the whereabouts of others. He wants to know whether anything is probably went back to check on the whereabouts of Volkler, I would think, because now Cloden will be third overall tonight, with Volkler over 6 minutes behind, over 7 minutes behind, actually 7.5 almost. And this is the top of the climb, and Richard, this man is unbelievable. He's just nipped out of the group, takes the maximum points on top of the Col de Chalimont. If he were to win the stage now, which is the only other climb left, he would get double points, so he would have got 40 points, I think it is.
I'm not sure that he's going to hang on to win the stage this afternoon unless he tries to slip away on the descent. I have a feeling in the back of his mind Jan Ulrich will be the man looking for glory here on this finish up here to Villard de Lans. It's not a very hard finishing climb, but it is around about 2.5 kilometers up to the summit of this area known as Villard de Lans 2000, although the finishing altitude here this afternoon is only around about 1,400 meters. That's Vironk on the back. Just in front of him, Levi Leipheimer. The white jersey in front of that is the German national champion, Andreas Cloden. And they've got a fairly long, narrow, sinuous descent. Armstrong is sitting there in third position. Jan Ulrich is in this group. Levi Leipheimer just sitting at the back there. He'll be thinking about the possibility of a late attack too. He won a stage in March in the Semana Catalana after a long breakaway, and it was on the queen of stages, the most difficult stage, and that was an indication that he'd come back to the form that gave him 8th place overall in the Tour de France a couple of years ago. I think the most serious person Armstrong will pay attention to is the man who was riding third there, Ivan Basso.
Well, just looking down at the yellow jersey here, those riders up front now could well be occupying the top 8 places in the next day, and certainly Levi Leipheimer is making quite a jump. This is the group. I'll just quickly tell you, 2nd overall, 3rd and 4th overall are here. 7th and 8th, 12th, 14th and 21st are their respective placings overall at the moment. And Richard Vironk today is becoming a true king of the mountain. We'll take a break. Rejoin us. Welcome back. We're on the final descent before we reach the lovely town of Villard de Lans, and then it's all uphill to the finishing line. And this very select group of 8 riders, Lance Armstrong, Jose Azevedo, Jan Ulrich, Andreas Cloden, Ivan Basso, Carlos Sastre, Richard Vironk and Levi Leipheimer are still locked together. They've thrown everything they can think at one another, and they're still running to the finish now. And the top 3 riders here are 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and they'll be 1st, 2nd and 3rd by the end of this day. There's the beautiful village, Martre de Val-Chevrière, what was left of it after the SS invasion in the World War. Well, this is now a situation where who will win the stage and what damage can it possibly do? Will Armstrong now try to herald the entry into the Alps and shock everybody by taking the stage? Or will Richard Viron claim double points by winning it because it's the last climb of the day and he'll increase what is a winning lead in the King of the Mountains?
It's amazing to see that Viron once again, even though he's a very good climber, he's used the tactic of getting himself into long breakaway situations to build his lead in that King of the Mountains classification. It's a very brave thing to do because you can absolutely and utterly blow yourself to pieces on a stage like that, and Vironka's somehow or another always had luck on his side for that breakaway, sort of a suicide attempt almost, to succeed.
Yeah. But looking at poor old yellow jersey, Thomas Volkler now, he's met his Waterloo today. 8 minutes is the gap now. There's something happening down there.
It's pretty interesting what's happening. It's just crackling through. 2 riders are actually regaining that leading group of 8. Michael Rasmussen has made a daredevil descent and also joining at the back end of the group as well. You can just see them in the distance there, just slightly. There is Jens Voigt as well. He's a great bike rider.
Oh, fabulous bike rider. I mean, he's lost Jakob Pill, his partner in crime in the long breakaways of this year's tour. Pill was unable to start, he's got a bad knee, I believe. But now it puts Jens Voigt as the big breakaway man of the tour. Spent more time out front than any other cyclist in the Tour de France. But you see, they've taken great risks on what is a very narrow road, whereas the leaders, they've sort of done their job at the moment for the day. They're thinking now of how they're going to work out the final climb for the finish. And so they've slowed down. The other 2 would be wise enough to know that would likely happen. So they've taken 1 or 2 risks coming down this rather tortuous road, and it's paid off. There's now 10 riders in this group.
Yes, Jens Voigt is a very good descender, and he's used those descending skills to pull himself back into the breakaway. He probably bridged around about 30 seconds on the descent of this climb, the Col de Chalimont. And also, we can never disregard the descending abilities of the man at the back there in the blue shorts, Michael Rasmussen, world mountain bike champion and an exceptionally good bike handler.
Now let's watch them go around these bends here. They're just, you see how they lay off the back of one another because they want to see the corner for themselves, not just play follow my leader, because these corners can run out rather sharply. And there we go, under what will be 10 kilometers to go.
6 miles of racing to the finish, and yes, they back off just a little bit on descents like this, because if something happens to the rider in front of you, you need a fraction of a second just to be able to change your direction, as we saw Armstrong doing last year.
Well, as they come down here, nice speed, round about 60 kilometers an hour. Anyway, let's have a look at some of the technology used in the Tour, in Infinity's technology of the Tour. Frankie Andreu inside a team car.
Every day we see the riders racing down the road, and we see the team cars that follow them. This is the Dominica Vacanza first race car, and it's fully loaded with tons of information. For example, this is the rider roster, which has every rider's number. They also have the race radio, which allows him to communicate to the riders, while the riders all carry little radios so they can all talk to each other. Also, a radio for the commissars that tell all the information of what's happening in the race. TV, so they can get the live pictures. The cell phone, so they can talk to everybody. An altimeter to judge the height of the climbs, a timer to see how long the breaks are, and probably the most important piece here is a scanner so they can listen to what the other teams are telling each other. 5 or 6 hours behind here, and you can see why the director is so important, because there's tons of information that he can feed to the riders.
Thanks, Frankie. That was our Infinity technology of the Tours. We rejoin the action now, and struggling at the back is the Seiko rider, has just been dropped from the group. Or he's just going back rather to the group. Could be 9 riders up here soon. There he is, Sabaliauskas of Seiko. He's not had a win in his career, and we're very surprised to have seen him hanging on to the leaders all day today. But it looks as though he's going to latch on. It's been a good chase by him.
Brilliant chase by him, and in fact to keep in contact with the leaders on a day where there's been an unbelievable battle. Look at this, Jens Voigt. Okay, let's get it organized. I'll organize it at the front. I'll ride for a little while, then you come further forward. He's a great man. I really appreciate this bike rider, and he's got a great sense of humor. He's one of those rare bike riders who, whatever the weather, whatever the racing conditions, he's always got good morale, and you need a guy like that in a team.
Of course you do, and this guy is demonstrate just how strong a workhorse is in the Tour de France, because he just goes back up to 100% of effort. He never thinks what might happen down the road. What we know will happen is he'll be dropped on the last climb to the finish, and then he'll ride home. But he's worked very hard to get back, just to give some more effort for his team leader before the lights finally go out. There's the determination now of Jens Voigt. In the distance, poor old Sabaliauskas, I think, might not latch on because this man's taken over. The race is heading for the last roundup. We'll head for another break. See you in a moment on OLN. Welcome back. You haven't missed anything. The same men are here, and Sabaliauskas, who tried to get on. It was our friend Jens Voigt who's turned the screw that little bit tighter. We are now going into Villard-de-Lans. We'll go through the little village streets, which are rather narrow, and then we'll descend away from the village, make a left turn and start the climb up to the finishing line today. And it is going to be a desperate moment. But look at this man here now. Sabaliauskas is going to get back on, and he's going to get back on at 5 kilometers to go, which now means we have 11 riders in front. There are some riders in the Tour de France never know when to say enough is enough, do they? The face now of Jens Voigt. That man is going to continue until his legs will turn no longer, and then he will hope that Ivan Basso, or maybe even Carlos Sastre, but more likely Basso, will perhaps win a stage here, and Armstrong is going to have to go with him if he attempts to win the stage, because there's a small bonus for the first 3 riders over the line.
He certainly does. He's going to be very attentive to that. 20 seconds for the first place, 12 seconds for second, and 8 seconds for third place. It could be very important after all. As you said a number of times, Phil, since the start of the Tour de France, Armstrong only won the Tour by 61 seconds last year. It is so important in the sport at this level to make sure you don't lose time anywhere out on the road. And in fact, it's quite interesting, the point that Ivan Basso and Armstrong have only been separated on 2 stages. The first time that they were separated was in the prologue time trial, where Ivan Basso lost 27 seconds, and the second time was in the team time trial, where he lost 50 seconds because of the new regulations. That's what gives him the 1 minute 17 second difference between Armstrong and himself as we speak today.
And it's not much 1:17 at the moment. It might open tomorrow if Basso can't ride the time trial as well as we would expect Lance Armstrong to. But today this is going to be desperate. These are the narrow streets I was telling you about as we climb into this beautiful town of Villard-de-Lans, high in the Vercors. The riders came round this corner. They'll flick off to the right, and thank heavens, because they've got wooden posts in the road. They go left. There's the flick to the right. As we don't forget, the last time he finished in Villard-de-Lans, 1990, Eric Breukink of Holland was the winner. He was a great time trialist, a great climber and time trialist. And he now manages the team on which Levi Leipheimer is a member. Leipheimer is in this group, and he's tagged on the tail of it at the moment as they continue towards the finish at 4 kilometers to go. We make a long descent now, then a left turn, then we'll make another left turn, and we're on the climb.
Very tricky circuit around Villard-de-Lans. The climb climbs up for 2.3 kilometers up towards the finishing line, and it is a fairly difficult climb as well, and it will catch out 1 or 2 riders. It's actually the worst at the bottom part of the climb, because for the first 700 meters it's running off at 9.1%. It gets just a little bit easier as we get closer up towards the summit.
Well, there is Leipheimer sat at the back. He's had a great day today, the best one for a couple of years in the Tour de France. Remember, he was out in the first 2 days with a very serious crash last year. That ruined any hopes. There's the left-hander. The other riders will come off from the right and then do the same lap of the town. Very interesting route, this one, as we now run for the hill.
Armstrong is sitting at the back of the group there, which is, to me, a fairly dangerous position to be. He's a long way back. Maybe he just wants to keep an eye on everybody to see what the position is going to be of the other riders, the men who he knows are going to launch an attack somewhere out on this course. There's Armstrong. He's got the black socks on this afternoon. Somebody asked him the other day, why are you wearing black socks? He said, when I went to the start the other day, I didn't have any white socks in my bag, so I thought I'd put them on. And actually, I quite like them now, so I might keep them on until the end.
Gosh, it's not long ago when you weren't allowed to wear black socks in the world of cycle racing, white only. There is Armstrong now. He's gone to the back to observe everybody now as they go towards the finish. He will only move, I think, if Basso moves or Cloden. Those are the 2 dangerous men to him in this group. The others he may not counter, because he would be quite relieved, I think, if the other riders stole the bonuses, Remember, we had 157 riders at the start today. Well, we had 158. We lost one on the way. Paolo Velotti abandoned. But once the mountains came, the yellow jersey started to crack straight away, and then Jan Ulrich attacked, and that dissipated the whole field in the Tour de France. This is now the select group, which is running to the line of 10. And again, Jens Voigt doesn't know when to stop. Well, any second now, he's about to hit the mountain and the wall at the same time, I would think. And then Acevedo will pick up the pacemaking for Armstrong. Kloden is the danger in the white, but Levi Leipheimer has suddenly moved up to number 3 wheel from the back.
Whatever you say, this man on the front is a beastie boy. Jens Voigt is such a tough bike rider. He's been in the break as well since the 53rd kilometre. He dropped back to look after his teammates, and exactly as you predicted, Phil, Voigt has now swung off. This is the steepest part of the climb. This is a 9% gradient, and Acevedo is setting the tempo at the front. Leipheimer is in a very nice position there in second place. Kloden is looking very dangerous. Voigt's job done for the day. He's slipping off the back of the group, but that's not important. What's important is what happens at the front.
Well, he's got 1.2 miles just to climb. That's no big deal now, as Carlos Sastre, that was, who's gone. We're looking now at the group here, and we expect some action to come from somebody. Here is Voigt as well. Only Basso left now, as expected, alongside Lance Armstrong. Acevedo is also casting adrift. It's going to be a battle royal because Leipheimer is still there, and so too is Richard Virenque.
It's going to be a battle of the big men here, the big men at the top end of the overall classification. Armstrong has been left completely alone after the job done by Jose Acevedo. Michael Rasmussen also just slipping off the back, but Levi Leipheimer is still in contact at the front. There are 2 riders in the front group there for T-Mobile now, Andreas Kloden and, of course, Jan Ulrich. Virenque has been dropped off the back there. Not surprising. He's been on the breakaway for a long time. So too is Rasmussen, no longer a member of that leading group.
This is amazing how the strong men have just projected themselves yet again in this Tour de France. The men we have come to know from the Pyrenees, Basso, Armstrong, Kloden, are still there. But this time, Ulrich is still there. And watch out, because our cameraman is going to have to catch up with them. Here they are now. Leipheimer sitting at the back on the wheel of Lance Armstrong. Armstrong on the wheel of Basso. Basso on the wheel of Ulrich, and Ulrich on the wheel of Kloden, who is now a workhorse and yet the leader of the team.
He's the leader of the team, but the strongest finisher in this group, as I said before, is a certain Jan Ulrich. You just check out the face of Ulrich if you can get a chance there. Armstrong is prepared. Look at that. He's on the large chainring, and he's got right across to the left-hand side. He's actually thinking about getting himself the win here. The other riders in the group are on the small chainring. If this comes down to the acceleration, Armstrong is in the correct gear as we look at him.
Well, it's up to Levi to make an early move, I think. Otherwise, he's going to rub shoulders with a tornado, because we believe Ulrich is going to wait for that last kilometre and is going to go. It is not a steep climb, this, but it hurts and it does destroy the rhythm. And it looks as though Kloden, despite the fact he is now lying 3rd overall in the Tour de France, is still the man who looks to his captain, Jan Ulrich.
Although they've got control on the front end of the main field, they have to keep the tempo nice and high. He's trying to set this up for Jan Ulrich, but all of those riders in that group need to sprint out because of the time bonuses on the finishing line. Armstrong looks very comfortable. He's nipped past everybody in this group who's been dropped on the run in towards the line. Look at Levi Leipheimer getting out of the saddle now. He's very twitchy. Now, if he jumps with about 400 or 500 meters to go, I doubt if they will react.
He's going to make the first move. You can see almost read his thoughts here. 800 meters to go. So it's still a little bit far out here to start the final action. Armstrong also making sure he lies clear of Basso's wheel so he can pull round him if he has to. Kloden now has got to be careful he doesn't lose seconds in the sprint. Basso also getting a little bit irritating.
Basso looking over, he wants to know where was Armstrong, what's he doing, is he still in contact with us? Well, yes, Mr. Basso, there he is, right on your wheel. Armstrong moving out, he's making sure now that he's not blocked in. He wants to have plenty of space to maneuver if he needs to accelerate.
Levi Leipheimer, I don't think, can go. He's beginning to lose ground here. He hasn't got it. Ulrich is being led into the perfect position now. At 500 meters to the line, it's going to be the top 3 men in the Tour de France tonight, with Jan Ulrich spoiling the party. Ulrich looks, and in fact, Basso is on the limit, I think, as Ulrich now tries to drive it up. collected Armstrong is waiting in the wings, and I don't know where Andries Kloden is getting it from. There's the scar on his leg from the crash today, but he's waiting for the move, and Basso is going to make the move now as Ulrich continues to lift the pace. How is Kloden doing this? He hasn't got much left. You look at him pushing and blowing there. He wants to stay in his slipstream as long as he can, but he's got to watch Basso doesn't block him in, because now I think Jan Ulrich must go on the inside. He's having to follow Basso's wheel, and Armstrong's got to go. Armstrong has got to take on Ivan Basso. Ulrich is trying to break him as they go round the final bend, taking it wide. That will throw Ulrich off his pace. Lance Armstrong is going to take the stage. He had to do it. He holds on as we get the 1-2 in the Alps we had in the Pyrenees. Armstrong, yes. And in second place it was Ivan Basso. Third was Jan Ulrich. And fourth was Andries Kloden, and still to come in will be Levi Leipheimer. He had no choice, he had to win.
But did you see the way he went round that corner? That was important. That's why Armstrong is such a meticulous man for preparing the Tour de France. He knew where to be when he came into the last little S-shaped corners there. He knew that he could sweep around that corner, open up a gap of 1 or 2 bicycle lengths, and then all he had to do was accelerate up to the line. That was a magnificent performance, but it was a performance that was built a long time ago. Probably 2 months ago he came and studied this finish. A big crowd now cheering their man Richard Virenque up to the line. Virenque has done a brilliant ride here this afternoon, and I think he's probably sealed the King of the Mountains title for a 7th year, not in succession, but for their 7th year. But that was a remarkable performance, Phil, by Armstrong, and once again by his team as well.
And that is Lance Armstrong's 17th stage win in the Tour de France in history, and his second this year. From the Plateau de Bailly, which took us out of the Pyrenees, welcome to the Alps, Villard de Lans. This has been an incredible day of racing. The field has been torn apart. We never expected to see a stage like this, with the riders coming in, like Carlos Sastre here, in 1s and 2s.
Sastre tailed off just towards the end. That's a bit of a surprise, because Sastre is high up in the overall classification. See Richard Virenque, he will have got himself a lot of points out on the road here this afternoon, and that's what was important for him. But what a hard way to do it, going out in a breakaway after 53 kilometers of racing.
And I think I said his 17th. Well, I'm one out. I forgot to put his win in on the Plateau de Bailly. It was his 18th stage win today for Lance Armstrong. Laurent Brochard also coming in with a lot of time gain over everybody else. Sabaliauskas coming in. These were the men who have been up front all day. And there's Jan Ulrich going back away from the press and getting off down the hill there, but he had a great day. He'll get a penalty for that. You're not supposed to go back against the race while the riders are coming in. There's Christophe Moreau in as well.
Francis
and Mancebo, that's the important one. Georg Tochnig alongside him, but they've lost time today.
They've lost a serious amount of time, 2 minutes and 15 seconds when they cross the line. And these are now the teammates of Armstrong coming in. That's Chechu Rubiera. His job done for the day, and it was a remarkable job of work once again done by this team to set up the win for the man at the top.
And let us not forget that Lance Armstrong in a few moments time will be pulling on a familiar jersey. It'll be the maillot jaune, and he will get what for him is his 61st yellow jersey of a Tour de France, which will rank him 3rd in the all-time greats behind Eddy Merckx and behind Bernard Hinault. Let's have a look at the Pacific Life results here. Armstrong gets the stage win. He had to go as soon as Basso went. Same time for both, but he'll gain a little bit over Basso with the results of the time bonuses. 8 seconds more to be precise. Jan Ulrich 3rd, Andries Kloden 4th, Levi Leipheimer losing 13 seconds on the run-in. Looking further down, Richard Virenque almost a minute back, then Rasmussen, Acevedo, Jens Voigt, he still hung on, lost little more than a minute, crossing the line in 9th place. Carlos Sastre there in 10th at 1 minute and 24 seconds. Quite unbelievable. Well, what a finish that was by Lance Armstrong, win at number 18. After the break, we'll update you, and of course, we will hear from the new maillot jaune of the Tour de France. See you in a moment. And welcome back. So the Tour de France has reached its first station in the Alps. Villard-de-Lans, after 112 miles, there 180 kilometers of racing, Lance Armstrong continues to win the mountaintop finishes. And just as he did in the Pyrenees, it's happened here now in the main arena in Villard-de-Lans. Having a look out here, our aerial view brought to you by Trek as we look across the beautiful Vercors region of the Alps here. These aren't as high as the Alps where we're going tomorrow and the next day. This is a very different part of the Alpine chain near Grenoble. So let's have a look how he did it. He was brought out onto the attack with a very, very determined sprint finish because Basso tried for the 20-second win bonus. Armstrong said, oh no. And he was delighted with this. Very animated when he crossed the line. Basso in second place, Jan Ulrich in third, and Cloden in fourth. We are down the road now. 7.5 minutes has gone by. This rider's probably about 500 meters from the end. He can hardly muster any energy at all now. It has been a terribly hard day for Thomas Voigtler. His last day in the yellow jersey. But who knows, he's now become a superstar here in France, and just look at the crowd cheering him on.
Well, I don't think the French will ever forget this young bike rider. He's really earned a place in their hearts over the last 10 days because of his courage, because of his determination. That face he's pulling there reminds me of the face of stage 5 when he was in the leading group of 5 riders who finished 12.5 minutes in front of the main field. And nobody at that occasion gave him really very much chance of holding the yellow jersey for a day or two. He held it for 3 and 4 and 5, and now finally he's held it for 10.
He's still finding, he's looking at his legs to try and persuade them to keep pedaling at the moment. He's behind this group as he comes up towards the finish. He couldn't hold on to anybody's wheel in the end. Arriving now, Bobby Julich there, just about 5 men down as well. And behind him, Giuseppe Guerini, who launched Jan Ulrich on the attack today. Didn't work out, but he did prove that Ulrich hasn't lost his appetite for the Tour de France. They're in at 8 3/4 minutes behind Lance Armstrong. You can hear the crowd cheering, and they're going to continue to cheer Thomas Voigtler. He's going to be so glad at the moment to finish. George Hincapie's just finished in the group. I think it was George, or it might have been Sandy Cassar as well. So it's going to be tight here, but he will keep his white jersey tomorrow. So the yellow jersey, come on, dig in. He's racing against time now to keep his white jersey as Sandy Cassar has just finished in that group ahead. So he looks at the clock again. The crowd are on their feet, applauding the leader of the Tour for the past 10 days as he comes up to the line now, and he's timed in at around 9.5 minutes behind. Congratulations all round. Well, as one yellow jersey finishes, the man he's going to hand it over to is none other than Lance Armstrong. And I'm pretty sure we can now speak with Lance Armstrong down in the finishing area. So we're just waiting to catch up with Lance. We know he's down there, and we're getting him ready for a conversation. But right now, Lance Armstrong being made ready to also receive his 61st maillot jaune of his Tours de France. And that ranks him clearly on his own now. One more than Miguel Indurain, ranks him 3rd overall in the race for the maillot jaunes. He's set fair now to win his 6th Tour de France, and it does seem quite clear his only rival is Ivan Basso. They rubbed shoulders again in a sprint finish today.
They certainly did. Armstrong had the ability and the knowledge of the finishing line. There he is, and I think we can listen in.
Yes and no. I personally didn't expect that. You know, it was odd this morning in the meeting. Johan said, so for some reason I think Ulrich's going to make a big attack today. So his crystal ball must be really working this year, because you know they had Guerini come to the front, make a pretty fast tempo, shredded the group that we were in, and then he went. But it was harder than I expected, more aggressive.
With the fact that Ulrich did go, with the fact that you somewhat combined with CSC and worked together to bring him back, did the race plan develop to go for the win, to go for the yellow?
Yeah, I mean, that's the good thing about knowing the stages. We knew that I mean, Jan could go, and you know, there was absolutely no concern, no panic within our team, and I suspect there was no real panic within CSC, because Ivan still had Sastre, and I had Freud and the ace, and so and then Voigt ended up coming back from the break, so everything was under control.
Speaking of knowing the stages and looking towards tomorrow, you have said that you want to know every centimeter of Alpe d'Huez. You've ridden it a number of times. Does the fact that you have so much confidence and familiarity, with the mountain just make you fear it less than the others?
I don't know. I mean, everybody else has also gone and ridden it a lot, so Ivan's going to be tough, and I have the advantage of starting behind him, so I'll have his time checks all the way up, and we'll go as hard as we can. If I think he's riding so good that if I have an off day, there's a chance that I lose time to him. But then we still rely on the final long TT.
You're about to put on your 61st yellow jersey. That's only behind Merckx and Hinault. Put that in perspective.
Impossible. I didn't. When I put on my first one, I was the happiest man in the world, and that would have been enough for me to take that to the grave. So to put on 61 and to hopefully wear it for another 5 days and end with however many, and I don't know. It's I've never thought about it like that.
All right. Well, congratulations on a great stage.
Thanks.
So Lance Armstrong there, again, shrugging off a record which he's going to set, that's for sure, because 61 yellow jerseys puts him number 3 on the podium in that particular competition. So let's have a look then how the stage results are as the riders came in. Pacific Life helping us out here. Lance Armstrong winning, 4 hours 40 today. Ivan Basso, familiar with the last 2 days in the Pyrenees, we had a similar result, both in the same time. Jan Ulrich 3rd, Andreas Kloden 4th, Levi Leipheimer 5th. We'll take a break and then we'll see the presentations, and we might even grab another word with Lance Armstrong. See you in a moment on OLN. Welcome back. The peaks of the Pyrenees now exchanged for the peaks of the Alps, and the 1-2 exactly the same as it was in the Pyrenees. This time Lance Armstrong there, finding Basso alongside him in 2nd place, and the overall time for the day they didn't gain on each except for the small bonuses. But what it has now done, this is the overall classification now by Foster's. Lance Armstrong 1 minute 25. The bonus is only making a slight difference over Ivan Basso, and Andreas Kloden is into 3rd place. Lance Armstrong is on the podium as the new leader of the Tour de France, but first as the stage winner. A massive crowd cheering Lance Armstrong. We read in the papers how people boo this man. I've never seen actual evidence of it. The crowd here at Villard-de-Lans, they're going back in rows and rows and rows as far as we can see, and they are all applauding.
Well, I think the important thing to remember is Armstrong says it's so much easier to hear one whistle or one boo than it is to hear the whole of the applause that comes down here at the finishing line. A nice piece of advice there, because that man there is a 5-time winner of the Tour de France, and Armstrong now with his 61st jersey here this afternoon is only behind Eddy Merckx, Bernard Hinault, and he's moved up into 3rd slot.
He was particularly delighted with this win because he knew he had to get the better of Basso and stop him getting that 20-second win bonus. As it was, he gets 12, so Armstrong gained 8 by beating Basso in the sprint. And that might be crucial, it all depends what happens in the time trial tomorrow, because it's going to be some great day. There he is back on stage now. He just stares at these yellow jerseys and he seems to just love this moment in his career.
Well, it's amazing that he's come back to ride so perfectly in the Tour de France after the disastrous year he claims he had last season. Made a few mistakes, went away during the winter months and put everything back together. And this year, I think he's been even more meticulous than ever. That's Robin Williams in the crowd there, just having a look. He's flown in this afternoon to see Lance Armstrong, and I'm not sure that he was expecting him to win the stage and get the yellow jersey as well.
Well, it was well timed. It's a perfect day to arrive. The Alps begin with a very familiar man in yellow, Lance Armstrong. Time trial tomorrow, the big mountain on the Grand Bornand. It's going to be a tough week now, and he's got to defend his lead. So he carries off his 61st little line. He's got plenty of them. Let's have a look then at the overall classification from Foster's. Here they are. Basso 125, Andreas Kloden up to 3rd, 322. Mancebo didn't lose that much, he's still 4th and he's at 539. Jan Ulrich from 8th is up to 5th now, only slightly better positioned at 654. Jose Acevedo up from 7th to 6th. Tocznik falters. Thomas Voigtler, the leader, goes to 8th, but will wear the white jersey as best rookie tomorrow because he is the best rookie in the race right now. Carlos Sastre, Gilberto Simoni slips 2 here as we look at the top 15. Levi Leipheimer has climbed 4 places, by the way, into 10th overall, which is great for him. Richard Vironk in 16th place. Sandy Kassar, the other rookie who's been wearing the white jersey, he's now in 19th place, 17 minutes. These are huge gaps, aren't they? With the time trial to come tomorrow, Armstrong still the man to beat. We'll take a break. Come on back and join us again. Welcome back as we continue now with the prize presentation and all of the accolades here at Villard de Lans. 113 miles they have covered. It's time for the King of the Mountains now to receive his polka dot jersey. It is, of course, Richard Vironk. There he is, waiting for another polka dot. Well, he is lining up for his 7th victory in the King of the Mountains. That in itself is an outright record. And today we've also seen Lance Armstrong take the lead in the race. He's looking for his 6th victory, which would also be a record in the Tour de France. Well, kisses all round for Richard, a very popular man here as he holds up the flowers again. The crowd cheering him on. He always goes in those early breaks and tries and gets the points, which he did today. Anyway, while we see Vironk on the podium, we can find Craig Hummer along with Lance Armstrong in the basement. Over to you, Craig.
Thanks, guys. Well, Lance, you talked a little bit earlier about the team. Go through again how critical it was, how perfectly placed they were today.
Yeah, they were, I mean, like every day we've seen so far, they've been super. Now we're in the days where we don't get any help. At least today we didn't get any help from Brioche, and they were actually putting guys in the break. So from the beginning of the stage, we had Benjamin, Eki, and Pavel controlling things, and then we started with Tricky and George and these guys on the climbs. And the plan was a little disrupted when Telecom attacked, but again, we had Floyd make it with the front group, Ace made it with the front group, and George and Chechu were sort of swinging out there trying to come back, but they never made it back. But overall, it was still another great team day.
You had the energy going, that's for sure, at the end. You could tell you were very excited with the win. It looked as though you might even be putting on a show for your buddy Robin Williams, who flew in today.
He was in the car with Johan, so he's always. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing for Johan, because he's on a serious day like this. Robin's back there, yelling at everybody. But in the last 10 or 20K, Johan was talking on the radio. I said, no, don't worry, Johan. Just have the ace, keep it together. I'm gonna win the stage. It's not a problem. I felt really amazing at the end. I know the finish here. In fact, we did this in the prologue of the Dauphiné last year, and so I said we just keep it together, and I think I can do it in the sprint.
Touch on again tomorrow's stage, the time trial. You know every inch of it, as we've talked about. Where do you see the critical parts of the climb being, and where can you gain time on your rivals?
Well, the Alpe d'Huez is relentless. I mean, it's 13 kilometers. It's always steep. It starts steep. It's pretty much steep all the way through. Psychologically, I try to go into thirds. I break it up into thirds. There's a little village a third way up, an old church, and then there's another village and a church 2/3 up, and then you have the finish. And so I'll play it like that. I'll probably start conservatively because the top is also steep, can be windy, and then you start to get up to 16, 17, 1,800 meters, and we all know what that feels like. So you need the air, and we'll see what happens.
All right, congratulations again. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks.
I must say, it's making my legs ache just describing the climb of Alpe d'Huez tomorrow, because it is going to be a brilliant day already, and for a week the crowd have been building on Alpe d'Huez. The police are saying don't even go if you're leaving it till race day, because you won't be allowed onto the climb itself. It's going to be an incredible day tomorrow.
It's going to be an incredible day, but what I think I took out of that interview with Lance Armstrong there was he knows where everything is on that course. The small church that you get to after 3 or 4 kilometers, then the corner you go around to the next church, you look up there and you see the summit that you've got to go for. But he knows how to dose his effort over the time trial of the Alpe d'Huez. It's going to be a big day.
It's going to be a big day for us all. Anyway, let's remind ourselves now of our Subaru moment, driven by what's inside. And it's a big moment, this, for Lance Armstrong. How confident was he when he said, just tell Ace, that, by the way, is Jose Acevedo, to keep it together and I'll win the sprint. Well, they both played their parts in this one, and out comes Lance Armstrong. Goes to a very difficult finish there, which threw Jan Ulrich off his line completely, and Basso himself also had to fight to get the same time. I think they were a bit generous there, giving Basso the same time. I think he should have been placed probably at 1 second, but there we are. They've given him the same time, and Lance Armstrong gets for him his 18th stage win in the Tour de France. And this, I think, was very special. It was very, very important. That's it. That's our Subaru moment, driven by what's inside. Well, as we look out across the Alps, remember, these are the lower part of the Alps, the Vercors. We have to go now to the higher section, which is Alpe d'Huez tomorrow. It's a steep time trial. We've got lots more to come before we leave you. And so we'll take a break, and then we'll look ahead as to where we are going now. All of the VIPs have arrived to look at Lance Armstrong. They chose the right day, the day he took the lead in the Tour de France. And it's the hard time trial tomorrow. See you in a moment. Welcome back. We look down here on the beautiful village of Villard-de-Lans, and Lance Armstrong, a while ago now, about half an hour, crossed the line in first place. Remember, he finished a long way ahead of the erstwhile Maillot Jaune. Well, here he is now. He's pulled on his jersey as champion of France, and he's now going to replace that with the white leader's jersey as best rookie of the Tour. He finished 119th in his first Tour de France last year. We never mentioned his name once. Now he's led this race for 10 days. He's led both categories. Now he can claim the white jersey.
And he still has a very serious advantage in this competition. I would roughly estimate it at around about 7.5 minutes. It has been a brilliant story, the relationship that this young man, 25 years of age, has had with the yellow jersey for 10 days. A bit fresher now, but I tell you what, there's a big change, Phil, in the overall classification now.
And here it is, the Foster's general classification. Armstrong 125 ahead of Ivan Basso, 322 up on Cloden. They are the top three now with the absence of Volkler. Mancebo didn't do too badly, though he took a bit of a beating, 5:39 back. Ulrich up from 8th into 5th, but still looking for 6 minutes and 54 seconds. Acevedo comes up from 7th to 6th. Tocznik loses a bit. Thomas Vogler from 1 to 8, but the best rookie. And Levi Leipheimer up from 14 to 10, with almost 11 minutes back. The other rise we saw a lot of today was Carlos Sastre. He's 11th now. Simoni we didn't see all day, dropped down there to 12th. And Michael Rasmussen 14th. He's been attacking a lot in the mountains, to say the least. Sandy Cassar, who will be second in that white jersey competition, is in 19th place, and Richard Virenque there in 16th place. But it's the time gaps on the right of the screen there. They are massive now. He's really only got one rival, hasn't he?
Ivan Basso is the only rider that I think Armstrong really needs to worry about. I think he will just ride his own race on the slopes of Alpe d'Huez tomorrow, because it is going to be a monumental occasion. Never did I ever think possible, Phil, that we could have an individual time trial up the slopes of the Alpe d'Huez. The AMD map will show us just exactly where we're heading to tomorrow, and we've been talking about this stage since October last year when the Tour de France was presented to us. 21 corners, starting from the valley below the town of Bourg-d'Oisans up to the summit of what is probably renowned as the shrine of mountain climbers in the world of professional cycling. That's it, just 15.5 kilometers. It's only 10 miles, but it is all uphill to the finish. And Mr. Lance Armstrong will be looking to try and stamp his authority onto this bike race.
Well, don't forget, Ivan Basso took a bit of a beating in the very short prologue time trial behind Lance Armstrong's great ride there. This is it. In the prologue, Armstrong second, Basso only 70th, and the total difference time gain 27, advantage Lance. In the team time trial, US Postal 1, Basso's team 5th, 50 seconds advantage Lance, overall 117. But don't forget, Lance today taking 8 seconds in bonus time, so that's gone out even a little bit more. Don't forget, it all happens tomorrow. We bring you much earlier coverage, so do note our special times for the time trial. Our AOL for broadband pre-race show with Alan Bob, that will come to you at 8 a.m. Eastern time. Then we will start our live coverage of the Alpe d'Huez time trial. That's it, we can see between the crowd, by the way, at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. Prime time coverage coming to you at 8:30 p.m. Eastern and Pacific. Going to be one big day tomorrow. Well, as we go to a break this time, there's a very famous man coming to see us now. Robin Williams just arrived by helicopter. What a time to choose. We'll be talking with him straight after the break.
Back we are on OLN, Al Troutwick, Bob Roll.
Juntos amigos, Ali Corri, OLN.
F-O-L-N. When they say it.
This is the Colombian commentary.
I heard you were wreaking all sorts of havoc in the Lance Armstrong U.S. Postal Team car. Is that in fact the case?
I was there to hand out water and gels, or as we call it, goo.
Now, you're a big fan of this. What was the mood in the car like when Jan Ulrich...
It was very exciting because it's a United Nations car. There are people speaking Flemish, Spanish, the different Checho, vaya, la montaña, and also Flemish, which is good, and also back and forth people talking French, which is necessary en France. De parle français, it's Tour de France.
I know.
Okay, work on it.
I'll work on it.
And also we were speaking many languages, German, which we must speak occasionally in France. Every so often.
Yes.
When you're standing there and you watch Lance with the yellow jersey on and you with the appreciation you have for the sport, what are you thinking?
I think the boy did it. I think if you see being in the car for 5 hours, watching all the changes, you know, what is it, 6 climbs, no waiting, the ascents, you know, the climbs, the descents. It's insane. I mean, and you're in a car holding on like this. Here's a bottle of water, boy! And it's shocking to see. I mean, you see it at home, you're watching, you see this, but then you look up and go, that's a mountain, and you're going through these almost like woodland trails. You expect Bambi and Little Thumper going, go, Lance, go.
You're at dinner with some friends, and they say, what is that climb to the mountain really like? How do you describe it?
Imagine pulling a 2,000-pound weight. I was going to go someplace, but I can't say.